right across.
And what it needs, because of the complexities involved in this, what it needs is a sustainable effort collectively, involving the entire community of Jamaica. Because this is our problem, is that we do not have that. If for a lot of the different pockets in Jamaica, talking about the classes and the colors and so on, the strata, that if it does not impact and affect us, if something happened to a few Christians, or a Christian, then the church comes out, and the Christian community is in mourning. Yeah. If something happens in the private sector, Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, then they come out and they lock down the country. If something happened to a police, remember the police force, then it is a police issue. So the thing is as disjointed as it is.
Disjointed and isolated.
And we don't see ourselves as one.
True. But on a wider view, a lot of talk since that has been about legislation and DNA and so on and so forth. I remember I think it was about 3 years ago, one of the officers who were here from England, the one who was in charge of crime, I don't remember what his name is, the newsroom had invited him here.
Green, was it? Green?
Ah, right, that's the man. And I'd ask him if he believes that government was serious about fighting crime. And it was very speculative, because he was saying he's not sure, because when we draw a reference to the DNA legislation, which is in today's world, I would almost think automatic. And I was surprised when this incident came up that is still not on the books.
Well, you're surprised, and this is where now we have to stop being surprised. Here's the situation, and this is why now we have to change. We have to change the whole thing. But I tell you why. Because I say, if we, the people, don't decide to hold the fire to them tails, because at the end of the day, they're representing us, but there are so many issues that come up as punctuation marks when something like this happens, that once it is over,
that's it.
That is it. We put on black and we walk through the street and we pretend for ball, and then we go back home.
And go back right home. And
the question we need to ask ourselves now, what do I need to do to change that individually and then collectively now, just to hold those who are representing us accountable and responsible, so that it's stuff like this, so that we're paying $5 million to a one person at the Ministry of Education. For consult, we pay $5 million for consult. When it consult, we know how to educate our children. So you're paying $5 million consult
that
the
can
fees.
Be dangerous too.
No. Consult the community. Consult the community, because the people look at there are some consultants who.
Andrea, we have to.
Let me finish. There are some consultants in ministries across Jamaica, right? Who also write in the newspapers.
Yes, but I believe in expertise.
Yes, of course, you believe in expertise. Nothing wrong with outside expertise.
No.
But something else is more important than outside expertise. You have to you see, there are a lot of stuff that needs to be in place first before you can pay for outside expertise.
No, I'm not talking about paying for outside expertise. I'm talking about when you're going to consult, it must be somebody who has expertise there.
But expertise is coming from experience.
Yes, that's true.
Aren't you a parent?
Yes.
You don't have expertise in raising your child?
Yes.
Or children?
Yes.
So what kind of more expertise you want than that?
But we still have to be very careful.
Of what?
Because to some people, what is expert and what applies here doesn't necessarily mean it works there.
Expert is only prestige or authority, because somebody go learn or get a Rhodes Scholarship. A Rhodes Scholar is somebody who was...
Yeah, but I understand that,
a Rhodes Scholar who is someone who has learned to enslave his or her own people,
Yeah, because...
through the education process.
Because the theoretical expertise is not necessarily the expert that you want either.
Exactly. So that's why I say, come into our communities, have consultative meetings with us in our community centers like we used to do, and while we pass for exams, right? Come into our communities and consult us, right? And we don't want to pay. Come consult us.
You don't want to pay.
Don't have to pay if you come consult us about how we're going to deal with our children. Nobody's talking to we the people. They're paying consultants from all over the world to come tell us how to raise our children.
I agree with what you are saying, but not in
agree.
totally.
It's okay to disagree.
Not in totality.
You don't have to agree with me.
Because we have to balance it.
That's what I'm saying too. We cannot afford to pay consultancy fees of millions of dollars when our children are going to school hungry. When our children, you remember when we went when we wanted to build a playing field for the school in Catadupa?
Yes.
Remember the condition that we saw there? Remember how you felt? Then how do you now? How do you reconcile knowing that one consultant is getting millions of dollars while the children in Catadupa are crammed into a slave ship kind of learning experience and don't even have access to a play field? That's why I say consult us.
Yes, but at the same time, Andrea, a lot of people's expertise are based on how they are socialized. And if they're not socialized the right to develop that kind of expertise.
Robert, but these are our
that is why I'm saying we have to balance
but Robert, expertise is there's expertise and then there is expertise, right? If you we could be socialized, nobody not socialized better than rural Jamaican people, right? This is where you still have a semblance of the village raising the child in rural Jamaica. Now, if you want to know how it may consult us. We show you how that goes. Last week I had some women here who from Marlborough and St. Mary. You know why they were here? They saw the community centers falling into disrepair and them not waiting for government. Them a consult themselves.
Exactly.
All they want is some airtime to come tell the people themselves they're going to have a concert on October 15 and they want to buy a weed whacker. I mean, you see, so I'm saying that we know what's good for our communities. We don't need a consultant from foreign to tell us what's good for our communities.
Yeah, but I'm looking at the bigger picture in terms of, we talk about like education and so on.
Yeah, but we're not Switzerland.
No, we're Jamaica. Right,
so until we get to the Switzerland part, give it the money to build a proper classroom for our children.
But the bottom line is, Andrea, is that
is at 9:50. but go on.
Is that we cannot wait until things happen and then we take action.
That is the point I'm making.
That is the bottom line.
But Robert, that is the exact point I'm making, because you cannot fix problems from the top. You cannot legislate change. You can't legislate behavioral change. It's just you can't legislate change. You can write it on a bit of paper and you can pass it through all the different kind of law and legal wranglings that you want to take it through. And you could have put it in a gold case and said, this is the law. But if you do not go down in the trenches with the people, there's no you will get no change.
But Andrea, why is it that everybody else know the solution to all these problems except the persons who are in place to do what?
But I don't think everybody knows the solution, which is why I ask you.
But what I am getting,
we don't necessarily know the solution, you know.
No, but the process to the solution then. Everybody else seem to know it, you know.
Problem solving is an interesting thing, you know, Robert. Problem solving is an interesting thing. You have problem solving and you have action generating, because you can have a situation where, and you know this very well, where a man might come up with a solution and then because him have the solution, he must now find the problem to fit it. And that is what is happening to our country.
Yeah. But why is
That's why we have so many consultants.
Right, but
because the solution was consultant, and then you have to find a problem to fit the consultancy. Yes. And that is what we are doing.
Andrea, you see, if the persons who are seeking consultants had any little bit of expertise in their field, you'd necessarily need all those consultants.
That's why no, it takes us to another thing. I agree with you. We have to probably what we need to look at is a constitution, and we need to look at how ministers of government.
That is my exact point.
Well, you said.
That is my point. Because as it is right now, anybody can become a member of parliament. You know?
Any Mr. Child molester.
What about you have cougars too, you know?
Same way, child.
Exactly.
Any Mr. or Mrs. child molester.
So, but you keep on. People always make it look like it's just the man.
It's a paternalistic society. Because we do not vet our members of parliament.
It is not that we don't vet them, Andrea.
No, but that first thing, remember now you're going to run for MP. We don't care where they come from or who they are and then behaving in the community or who them are, what them are doing.
But that is not a criteria. The criteria is to be popular or you have money and you're willing to stand. Although you still have people who enter that sphere who is genuinely going to help.
Yes, that's
true. But
then
get contaminated too.
Yeah, that's true. Once they go in, we realize that then they mix up in the dirty water and become.
But the bottom line again,
that at 9:45
is that you don't have to have any particular kind of qualification.
Not even any moral standards. Qualification is one thing. What about the moral standards?
And remember, the member of parliaments are what we call legislators.
What a
Some
crisis.
of them don't even know what you call so.
What a crisis.
But when they get in there, they start learn
to mash up the country. and we allow them to do it. Because if we look at this now, remember we are sold.
But that is how our system is.
They have sold us again, you know that. Yes, man, we have been totally sold. Look for any time now for anything come forward.
But Andrea, you keep saying that we have been sold. How much time are we going to be sold?
I see him think, I say, fam, when?
That is sold again, I resold.
So we're saying that parliamentarians don't have to be ministers of government. Because the way we see it now, and you talk about expertise, Jamaica needs management.
Yes.
And it needs management expertise.
Yes.
We have to look at the country like it's an organization and manage it. And I think
you think we don't have it?
We have management expertise, but they're not they're not parliamentarians.
They're not where.
And they're not permanent secretaries either.
They're not where they need to be managing.
No. Mm-hmm. So some of us have to step back. When I look at the Ministry of Youth and Culture, for example, and I don't even know why those two ministries together, but look at youth. Let me put culture one side for a little time because that can stay a little. But we have questions, etc. The Ministry of Youth needs a manager. It don't need a parliamentarian. It needs a manager.
Remember, Andrea, the parliamentarian is to legislate.
Well, this is just what I say. Me understand, right? The Ministry of Education, it needs management. Mm-hmm. It needs management. Mm-hmm. You have to look at the Ministry of Education like it is an organization by itself. Mm-hmm. You need somebody who can look at that now holistically, who can see the complexities involved in managing an organization and manage that. Mm-hmm. One person can't do it, you know. That's why we talk about the complexities. Mm-hmm. And you don't need for paying a $5 million for a consultant. But
I still think whoever is going to be at the helm of any ministry must have some expertise in that area. And not tell me about the community expertise, because everybody have that.
No, but that's why I say complexities, because there are different levels of expertise.
Right.
Because remember, at the community level, you have people there with serious expertise,
with
and
ideas
serious knowledge, and so on, you know. So it's who can really make the thing work. But the manager has to be more than just somebody who consider themselves in power. Because listen all them talk.
Exactly.
They say we are in power. Mm-hmm. You listen to that. Anytime Jamaican politicians stop saying that they are in power, or them get power, or them have power, then we will begin to see a change. Because it means that there's a mindset change.
That is what it is about, power.
We go and chase those crazy ballheads out of town.
So when you have nobody to chase, what are you going to do? Because they're always going to be there.
No, not always going to be there. We'll take it over.
Okay.
Look here, we ask that question. If a tree falls in the forest and it does not, if a tree falls in the forest, can I ask that question, sir? If a tree falls in the forest and nobody's there to hear it, does it make a sound?
Yes, it is still going to make a sound, man.
Explain that to me.
Nobody won't hear it, but the sound is made.
So,
but just that.
What is sound?
The fact that you don't hear.
Yes, nobody, not me. Nobody's there.
No, you're saying that the fact that nobody hears.
Nobody's there to hear it.
That means it does make a sound.
No, I'm asking you.
I still think it makes a sound despite the fact that nobody's there to hear it.
So what is sound?
No, that is what you talk about, complexities.
Let me just say that I agree with you, but I know that.
But it's complex.
Yeah, it's complex. It's an unresolved point. Did you know about that the maximum sentence for rape in Jamaica is life? That you can get life for rape?
But I've not heard anybody getting that.
That's it, me too. No, nobody not get life for rape.
The last time I've heard of anybody being sentenced was something about 3 or 4 years.
Many years.
A part of it, I think, suspended too.
So there you go.
But we still need to get to the persons who are doing these things. We need then, putting them away is one, but work on them before it happens.
Yeah, because we keep building prison. Now, who said that again? Lucky Jube. We keep, all we're building is prison. And I think we have to find a way now to deal with the, so I was talking about the youth and education, because Jamaica, the level, we're not a literate society. Jamaica can't say we're a literate society.
In the true sense of the word.
Right. And so we have to look at what is happening with our youth and what is happening at the level of the community. So it's a youth education and community development, That is one ministry, Youth, education and community development. One ministry that. And let us start there. Because all these ministries are connected now to national security and equal justice and equal rights. That's what the ministry name, Minister of National Security and Equal Rights and Equal Justice. Right?
How about going back for a ministry of mobilization?
What that mean?
Mobilize people in a positive way. That would encompass youth, security, everything.
Oh, we did have it before?
I think we had. I don't know what the basis of it was, but the name sound like something that you have the solution and you fit it in.
Is that solution and you find a problem to fit it?
Yes.
Right, which is an interesting thing. Come here and say, you come up with a solution and find a problem.
Because
it must fail,
No, but because a lot of anger is out there too,
Yeah.
A lot of anger is out there too, so that is also a part of the problem, and that is why you had even the next mob killing where it was in Old Harbour.
Yes.
I think it was yesterday or day before yesterday. But
yeah, with the motor vehicle.
Right.
Yes.
A lot of anger is out there too. So
yeah. Yeah, Ministry of Identity too. All right.
Oh Lord. So, that one is very important.
Mikey Concha says, Andrea, it's time we employ qualified ministers of government, or if we put the people in position who are not qualified to do a job, consultation should be at their expense, not us. I agree. Totally.
That wouldn't solve the problem.
No, it's not going to solve the problem. The problem can't solve from the top. Problem solving, I say, is an interesting thing, and we can do it by trying to pull it apart and seek for the right answers and the right solution. But if we really are going to come with a solution and then try to find a problem to fit it, that's where our problem is. That is just going to generate another problem. Which is Jamaica's situation.
Why? That sounds like we have more problems.
No, but when we talk about the threats and the opportunity, it's an opportunity.
Yes.
It's an opportunity for change. It is our time, man. Let us change this.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Really did lock their arms, and how the women really did mourning and weeping and crying for so much hurt and so much pain and so much of a psychic trauma that have not yet been dealt with. And this takes us back to the story of Fiba, the black African woman on the Thistlewood estate, who endured along with Dolly and so many other of our African mothers and sisters and daughters and young babies who endured during the period, this wicked and brutal system of enslavement, the vicious and heinous and horrific rape perpetrated against them by and upon them and upon their forms and their bodies and their souls and their spirits by the white enslaver. Vicious and brutal rape has been a part of our slavery history, a part of our slavery self, our enslaved sense that we have not yet dealt with, because we have not dealt with the psychic trauma of the enslavement. We're not blaming rape on slavery, but we are putting this in context to say part of the enslavement period of Jamaica was a period of the vicious and horrific and brutal rape of our babies, of our mothers, of our grandmothers by the enslavers. And now, in this time, we continue. We turn that same depravity on ourselves, and we see our sons perpetrating these brutal acts against our daughters, and we do not speak of identity. We tell our people that they must wear black and remain silent. Raised in Jamaica against child molestation, against rape, against incest, and we've been like in your faces. And this is not about I told you so, because we don't need to be that petty, but this is about what are we going to do now? How do we move on from here? And is it enough, is a question we're asking this morning, to don black, to dress in black, and to remain silent. My friend on Facebook, my sister on Facebook, E.T., says, but isn't it the silence that got us here in the first place? Is this a time to march again, to wear black and remain silent as our country implodes? These are the questions we're asking ourselves this morning as we talk about not just rape. And for me, as you've heard, this is one. Criminality in Jamaica is criminality, regardless of where it is. And these punctuation marks that have us up in arms and taking to the streets, once we have spent that energy on the streets of Jamaica, in the squares, in Halfway Tree Square, or in Sam Sharp Square, once we have spent that energy in St. Anne's Bay, in Clarendon, in Manchester, in Mandeville, once we have marched, what then? Do we then go home and sit down and forget that criminality is what it is in Jamaica? It is our duty to ensure that this is it. Now is the time. Now is a time to put an end to criminality in Jamaica. And don't let them fool you with smoke screens and multiple mirrors. Don't let them fool you. And I'm talking about those who have been in positions of authority for such a long time, in positions of what they call power for such a long time, for years and years and years and years, and have not done anything, have not responded adequately to issues of rape and child molestation in Jamaica. We know they have not responded adequately because we have been part and parcel, center into saying to them, partner with us on the public education. Partner with us. Let us go into the highways and the byways and the hearts of the community. Partner with us. Speaking to Sissoko, for example, a few years ago, 5 years ago, we called Sissoko, partner with us. We call the CDA, partner with us. Let us get the education out. Let us go into the community. Let us be part of the change that we want to see as far as rape, child molestation, and incest are concerned. What was the response? No. That was the response. The response was no. And this is why we know that what we're seeing here in terms of the half-hearted response to issues of rape in this country is really a smokescreen, because it hasn't been politically expedient for government. It hasn't been politically expedient for those in academia. It hasn't been politically expedient for the movers and shakers, for the private sector. And we must speak truth to the people of Jamaica, that if it does not impact their communities, if it's not affecting their communities, then it's not happening. If a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? Does it make a sound? And we are talking this morning in particular about rape in Jamaica. We're going to be rebroadcasting in a little while a program that was carried a year or two ago inside of Sex Wise, which is a program I host on Tuesday nights. And this program was simply titled Rape. We have been focusing on this issue in Jamaica for a very long time. Since about 1998, here at Irie FM, we began to notice what then we called a trend. That was in 1998 of reports coming into us here at the station of child molestation, of incest, and of vicious rapes, especially of our young children in schools, on the way to school, and so on. And since that time, one of the reasons why we started a human sexuality program on Irie FM, it has been running since 1998 at Tuesday nights. One of the reasons why we started that program was for this particular reason, that we were getting these reports from our young children. We were getting calls from young children who were suicidal, who had already attempted suicide. We got calls from young children who were finding it hard to cope in schools. We were talking to teachers, we were talking to guidance counselors, and we were talking to just about anyone who could help us to understand what was happening in our society. As a result of that, we saw the need here at Irie FM to be part of a public education program to stem what we thought at the time, 1998, was becoming a crisis of rape and child molestation and incest and so on. So the program idea came out of that concept, and I remember pitching that concept to Mr. Young and saying, listen, it's something that we need to do. It's a public service for us. We need to do this. And interestingly, we have since then been focusing our attention seriously on issues of rape in Jamaica. About 7 or 8 years ago, we declared on that program that our lifelong journey, that our lifelong commitment would be to stem this vicious tide that we saw emerging and in a continuous and dynamic process of becoming something that something wicked and cruel and that was about to engulf us as a people if we did not deal with this. Now, I'm speaking truth to my people. I'm speaking truth to myself, because we have to rake this up and dig this up and to say how we have been complicit and how we have been part of the problem. So we declared a few years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, that rape, child molestation, incest, and so on would be part and parcel of the public education campaign at Irie FM. As a result of that declaration, and I'm talking now for myself, my life was threatened. Now, here is a situation threatened by those who felt that this should not be something that we should be talking about, especially against the background of others being at the time in prison for rape. Now, we had sisters. I had sisters emailing me, writing to me, begging me to come off this topic and to deal with it in a more sensitive manner. We had mothers. I had mothers saying to me that I was going down the wrong place. I was going down the wrong path. Now we see these same mothers and these same sisters taking to the street in black, remaining silent, hide nothing from the masses of our people, tell no lies, expose lies wherever they are told, mask no difficulties, mistakes, failures, claim no easy victories. Amilcar Cabral. We're rebroadcasting a program that we carried a few 2 years ago on Sex Wise. It was one in a series of many, and this is about rape, because we really don't think that we need to go back and call these people to come back and have this discussion again. And we can pull for so many of these, and I'm quite sure that in the media, my colleagues, lots of my colleagues, can pull for so many of these programs that they've done over the years. Let this not be a moment of a punctuation mark, as we are wont to do here in Jamaica, where when something heinous and horrific happens, that we see it, we hear it for once, but we miss the cues We miss the warning signs. We miss the signals that are saying to us something is about to happen. Something is emerging. If we do not deal with the little things at this point, then they're going to become bigger things. This has been our problem. Let this not be a punctuation mark. Let this be a continuation of our response to and our stance against rape, incest, and child molestation in Jamaica. Speak truth to the people. And part of this is about menticide, because we really are in that mental condition in Jamaica in which we as a majority people, the majority African people, the majority of the black persons in Jamaica have lost our ability to question, to think critically in the interest of ourselves, in the interest of our race, and the interest of our black people. Now, this is what we're doing in this space. This is a Pan-African space, and this is our job, our responsibility. So to the authentic, revolutionary, nationalist, Pan-Africanist, and would-be black leadership, we ask of you this morning, and we are imploring you this morning to be part of a change you want to see. This is where we're going. Oh, this is not about I told you so, because as our Mama Marimba reminds us, we don't have time for pettiness and egotism. This is about understanding the urgency of honest, effective, revolutionary, nationalist, Pan-Africanist organization. We say now is a time. We're tired and fed up. And, there's some cliches that we can throw in and around this program this morning. We're fed up and tired, and we're tired of being fed up and tired. But basically, it is the truth of what it is. And it is what it is. So we do have a responsibility to be the change we want to see. We can do it individually at first in our homes and in our families and in our communities. Ultimately, the change will ricochet, will reverberate throughout our communities, and as the bulk of the masses of the people in Jamaica, as a majority of those who continue to live below the poverty line, who continue to be the victims of criminal, vicious acts. We do have a responsibility and an obligation to stand up and say, how come? How come? And also to fulfill that promise of emancipation, to fulfill that promise we made to our ancestors when we chose to return. Because in the African concept of who we are, we choose to come. And for those of us who chose to come, we made that promise to our ancestors as we were coming, to say to them that we will fulfill the promise of emancipation, that you have been viciously raped and violently raped by the Thistlewoods of Jamaica in particular, and that we will ensure that our daughters and our sons are not raped and sodomized anymore by that spirit of enslavement. So we really do have that responsibility to make the change. And I speak as I speak in this space, which is an African space, which is a Pan-African space. Now we're going to go to a program which is coming from a different space, which is the space of Sex-Wise. And we're going to rebroadcast this program that was simply entitled Rape, which was carried 2 years ago. And my guest on that program was Maurice Tomlinson, attorney at law, Dr. Beverly Scott, founder and executive director of Family and Parenting Center, Alison Hawthorne, guidance and counseling education officer for Region 3, and Doreen Walters, nurse and author of Cry Rape. We can't say it in any other way than the way we're saying it this morning. My co-host has joined me in the studios. The man himself, Mr. Maurice Tomlinson, attorney at law. Let me just tell you, it's very good to have you this evening. True. It's good to have you.
Thank you.
As our co-host this evening, and I just want to quickly introduce our topic. You know, Maurice, we kind of, it's one word, right? But we like to play with phrases in terms of coming up with our topic, something catchy and, but with this, we looked at so many different combinations of what phrase we could have used with this particular topic. It's so serious that we thought, just say the one word. Mm-hmm. Rape.
Right.
That's what it is.
Definitely. Yes.
Rape. And I suppose there are a lot of definitions, are there?
Boy, it's not only definitions, it's what constitutes it, where it can be found, who can commit it. It's quite a complex issue in our society especially. So. And
over the years we have, and even you've been inside here with us too, trying to understand it from all different perspectives, including in the home,
right.
Between husband and wife.
Exactly.
How far that reach?
Well, yes.
That discussion.
It's now in law. Man can be convicted for raping his wife, so be careful, all you married men.
What does that involve? I mean, what constitutes rape in a marriage?
Well, once a man has sex with his wife and his wife has not consented, and he is reasonably sure that she has not consented or has reason to believe that she has not consented. Now, what would constitute reasonable belief in that context is a very complex thing, because it depends on, how often they have had intercourse, the nature of their intercourse, whether he has been, sometimes people might say, whether he has been granted certain privileges. People think pre-play,
Play, you mean before?
No, some people consider the kind of no means yes.
Okay.
Might be a form of play that could get the man convicted of rape. So it is a very complicated issue. Unfortunately, we don't have enough case law to bear that out as yet.
How long has that been in law?
Just in 2009.
Anything yet? You've seen it in case?
No, I haven't seen any yet, no. But I'm curious to hear if anybody has any they can call in and tell us about.
I would be interested in that too. Yes. All right. Well, we're glad that it's finally in law because it happens, doesn't it?
Yes, it definitely does.
Yeah. All right. So we're going the gamut this evening. We're not going to be focusing on rape within the marriage, because we have part of our focus this evening. We want to look at younger people. We're looking at adults, but we also want to look at teenagers and young people who are raped. We've been talking about pedophiles and, carnal abuse and so on. So we want to continue that discussion. But just to let you know that we're going to be having in studio shortly, Dr. Beverly Scott will be joining us in studio. She's a part-time lecturer in developmental abnormal psychology and other psychology courses at the International University of the Caribbean. And she's a founder, you may know her better as a founder and executive director of the Family and Parenting Center. She's a co-author of 3 handbooks: Positive Parenting, Handbook for Guidance Counselors, Treatment for Children with Emotional Development and Behavioral Problems. All right, Alison Hawthorne is no stranger to the microphones at Irie FM. She's joining us. She's Guidance and Counseling Education Officer for Region 3. That's in St. Mary and Trelawney. And she has joined us in the studio. Hi, Alison.
Good night, Andrew. Good night, everyone.
Thank you for coming out at night time, because we normally see you in the daytime. Yes. Sunday morning, so it's good to have you. With Alison, we're going to talk, Maurice, about how rape is treated in schools.
Right.
Interestingly enough, we have, and it's an anecdotal, we have, factual reports of persons who have young women who have been raped, students who have been raped. They go back to school. The boys who are alleged to have committed the act are from the same school. Mm-hmm. And they are also gone back to school, and the case is still in court. How'd that
go? Well, you see, sadly, we don't have any other way to treat them, because the situation is you're innocent until proven guilty. And if they...
So what about the protection of the victim?
Yes, and that's why I'm saying it's a very sad situation. How do we segregate the victim from the perpetrators when the perpetrators have not yet been convicted? They still have constitutional rights to be free and at liberty without the incarceration. So it's a ticklish issue, because the question could very well be that, has she consented? What did she incite it? Did she
we're talking about cases of vicious rapes, gang rapes.
Yes, and I understand.
Which girl not got consent to gang rape? Let us start from the premise that no girl going to consent to no gang rape.
I don't want to presume.
You're not here, the lawyer, the people of
But I am sorry, Andrea. I can't divorce myself from myself.
We have to rely on the law. We must.
Not you too, Alison.
We have those are the decision-making entities that we have to abide by.
But what about the victim? What about the victim?
Persons are innocent until proven guilty.
No, but the victim go to the same school with the alleged
perpetrator.
There you go, alleged.
Right.
Perpetrators.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, rapers.
But once they're underage, they're all, they're all considered to be within the same category. If you're talking about teenagers, I remember we had that discussion last week when we discussed what is the age of consent, and we're talking about who is eligible to consent to sex. If a child under 18 or under 16 in some instances engages in sex, then that person...
No, Maurice, but we're not talking about sex now, we're talking about rape. It's two different things.
I'm not sure I'm able to make that fine decision, sadly.
I'm sorry, we're laughing at something so serious now.
Yes, it's a serious matter.
I know that I have somebody else in the studio who is totally with what I'm saying, right? I can see from her body language. We have author and nurse Doreen Walters, and her book is entitled Cry Rape. Let me read it. Yes, Cry Rape. Cry Rape, right? Doreen, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you for having me. Good night, everybody.
Do you have an opinion on what you've heard here?
Yes, I do.
Just come closer for me. I'm not hearing you too well.
A chapter in my book, chapter 10, is called Gangbang, where I was when I was attending school, almost raped by 6 boys from the same class. I was captured in a bathroom, and I was almost raped. If it wasn't for the good God and the strength, I kept my back against the wall and fight as hard as I could. Why I got out of that situation. But I wasn't the only one. It's a common thing in the community where I come from.
Is it your community in particular? Is this kind of very common across Jamaica?
It's common. And I suppose, not just Jamaica, across the world.
But your book is called Cry Rape. Give us a quick synopsis of what the book is about.
Well, basically, it's about an abused child, a child that was sexually abused from the age of 7. And she didn't tell anybody. She kept the secret and decided it was her problem and that she was going to deal with it. With all the stigma of rape and sex and everything, she just thought it was best to keep it to herself. And it wasn't until... she wasn't raped. She consented to sex. But because she was underage, it was statutory rape. And then she decided that she was going to cry rape. Because this was one situation that she couldn't cope with alone.
So is this autobiographical in any way?
It is totally autobiographical.
So this is based on your own life?
My own life story.
So your story is what? Your story is that at an early age,
I was raped.
You were raped?
I was raped at the age of 7.
Wow.
By tenants, a lodger living in the house.
Adult?
An adult, yes. And I couldn't tell anybody because sex was such a stigma. Sex was bad, and although I was the victim, I felt responsible. So it was a secret. And I was raped at 7, and I attempted to be raped again when I was 12. And that was when I decided that if I couldn't tell anybody, I had to fight. And that's what I did. I mean, mentally and physically.
How did you fight?
Yeah. Physically. I had to fight them because I wanted to survive. And I wanted to keep what was left of my dignity. So I had to fight.
If I can ask, the person who raped you at 7, how old
This man was probably 28, going on for 30. Yes.
Wow. That's really a depraved individual.
And it wasn't just once. He lived with us, so it was a repeated act.
So, and what was the situation like in the house in terms of adults who might have known or guessed or?
Both my parents were at work. It was a latchkey scenario. You let yourself in after school and look after yourself until they come home from work.
And there's a male lodger in the house, a tenant in the house,
who
a
knows
man.
exactly when I'll be alone, and I was too afraid to tell anybody, so I had to endure it.
And obviously this is a man who was trusted by your parents then.
He was not known. It was a tenant house. There was lots of other tenants living there. So we didn't know him that well, because maybe if she did, she wouldn't have left me alone, but,
Well, I mean, first, I commend you for coming on this program and being so brave as to write a very important book, because I'm sure there are many persons who have gone through your situation and have never had the courage to, cry rape. And that's one of the problems we face in the judicial system. People don't come forward with the stories because they're ashamed. And we tend to, sadly, we re-victimize the victim. So thank you for writing this book and for sharing so honestly. Do you think, though, that in all situations, mothers don't know that this is happening?
Yes.
Do you think that there is a possibility that the mothers know and they allow it for economic reasons?
That happens too, but not in my case.
Not in your case.
In my case.
Okay.
The thing that made it worse for me, why I kept it a secret so long, was because my parents were strict Christians. And sex outside marriage was not heard of,
Right.
So for me to admit to them that something like that had happened to me, I didn't want to be judged or stigmatized by it, so I kept it to myself.
Right.
So at the end of the day, at 7 you didn't cry rape.
No.
Obviously, I mean, a baby. When did you actually cry rape?
When I found myself pregnant, because it was something I couldn't keep secret anymore.
And what age was that?
15.
15.
And was this pregnancy for an adult or
An adult?
Well, that was rape anyway.
Exactly. That's why I decided that it was time. I couldn't fight anymore on my own.
So at 15 you were pregnant.
Yes.
Did the molestation at 7, the rape at 7, did it impact what happened to you at 15, do you think?
Well, the thing about the book is it's not just about sexual abuse. My childhood was full of all sorts of abuse. And I have sickle cell disease. So there was medical neglect, there was malnutrition, there was abandonment, sexual abuse. My childhood was full of all sorts of abuse. And I have sickle cell disease. So there was medical neglect, there was malnutrition, there was abandonment, there was a lot of beating. Jamaican parents love to beat, and they think the more they beat you, the better you're going to turn out, So there was a lot of abuse. So the rape was just a part of it to me. Life was hard, and then I coped as best as I could until, like I said, I had a problem that I just couldn't keep to myself any longer.
What happened when you cried rape at 15?
I was surprised at all the support that I received.
Who did you cry to?
The one person that I felt I could trust the most.
Who was that?
My headmaster at school.
What did he do?
He arranged for my mother to come and visit with him, and then we sat down and talked about what we were going to do. Yeah.
Did you eventually have the child?
I had him, yes.
How old now? Well, we're going to get to it.
Unfortunately, because I have sickle cell disease, he was born with the disease, and he was with me for 21 glorious years, but he died of sickle cell when he was 21.
Oh, so sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Sorry to hear that.
But he was a great inspiration for me, because I wanted to prove to everybody that in spite of him or because of him, I'm going to do what I want to do with my life.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of a program carried 2 years ago here on Irie FM on my Tuesday night program, which is a program about human sexuality, and that program I host every Tuesday. The program has been on Irie FM since 1998. Part of that program's mandate was to bring to the fore, to examine, to expose, to interrogate, call it what you will, the issue of rape, child molestation, and incest in Jamaica. So my co-host in this program was attorney at law Maurice Tomlinson. Dr. Beverly Scott is there in the studio. You're hearing from Doreen Walters, a nurse and an author, written a book called Cry Rape. She was raped, as you're hearing. And we're going to return to that program. We're carrying it for about 2 hours or so inside of Running African this morning. So we return now to that rebroadcast. So Alison, we heard Doreen say, listen, the one person who I thought I could trust the most was my headmaster. So here you're in the school environment. And we know the guidance counselors are very important in cases like this now. Give us an idea of what happens, what are the policies regarding stuff like this in schools across Jamaica? Is there an education policy or not? Or each school deal with it in their own way?
First and foremost, the guidance counselors and principals in the school follow the laws of Jamaica. We have a Child Care and Protection Act which outlines what should happen. Guidance counselors and educators are called prescribed persons, which they have a duty to report. Mm-hmm. So once the report has been made to them, they have to call the Children's Registry, the Child Development Agency, and report. Okay.
So that's the first thing you do. Mm-hmm. Once a child comes and say, listen,
a report has to be made. Mm-hmm. Right? And we always follow these. These are the laws that guide our practice. Right? So those are the things we have to rely on.
What happens then when the child... So the report has been made, the CDA or government agency gets involved. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it goes from there, Maurice, to, the legal channels,
right.
Obviously.
Right.
I presume that the prosecutor will be brought in. But tell me how you treat the children who are accused. Are they taken out of the schools?
Okay, if it's a situation in which persons are accused and they're in the same school, we rely again on the laws of Jamaica, which is innocent until proven guilty. We have to wait.
So they stay in the school.
All right.
Is there any attempt to segregate?
Ignore my question.
Is there any attempt to segregate though?
Remember now, the act has to be proven. The crime has to be proven. There has to be we have to rely on the investigators, and the school doesn't investigate.
So how is a victim protected from those she is accusing? Because it just seems that there's a dynamic there.
Our clients are all students. We try our best not to have a situation in which there is contact with even victim, accuser, or those students. Right? You change different classes. You do what you have to do.
What happens at lunchtime and going home time and devotion? And
I'm not going to say we have everything perfect, Andrea,
and I'm not blaming Alison, but I'm very concerned about it because I know cases right now, at least 2. Me personally.
Well, if you have somebody that has accused other students of rape, you say to them, you can come here, eat your lunch here, you sit there, you have more control over their movement than anybody else's movement.
That's the victim.
Yes. So you work with that and ensure that somebody is with them all the time. All right? However, for both groups, both sides, we seek counseling, whether it be internally at the school or external referrals.
All right, Maurice,
because we are not only interested in helping someone get over traumatic experience, but we are also interested in behavior change. All right, so all students are our clients.
No, I understand the theory of it, Alison, I understand what is on the paper, but then I'm talking about the practical. I mean, what happens on the ground? Because on paper, it all looks good. I know, it makes sense on paper, but then when it's happening on the ground, the girl she's been raped, gang raped or not, and the students, the alleged rapists are back in the school system with her. How do we prevent them from intimidating her?
Right.
I mean,
at grade 9, all grade 9s are teaching the same thing. So if you have to be reassigned or, relocated for a period, sadly, these cases are not dealt with or disposed of quickly. We have to acknowledge that first. right? The record of disposition of all criminal matters is abysmal in this country because we don't have enough judges, we don't have enough jurors, etc., etc.
So the girl who cries rape,
right,
and it goes, the CD and so on is calling, and it goes through the system. This could take as long as
years.
So she could come through school and go through school, and graduate, and it's still in the courts.
It could be because depending on how the defense attorney chooses to, treat with the matter.
Andrea, the Ministry of Education has two documents. We have a safety and security which sets guidelines on keeping everybody in the school system safe. So that's a preventative thing. We also have a critical incident management plan which speaks to different kind of incidents that happen in the school, and in that plan rape is one of them.
Okay, kind of a crisis management.
Yes,
prevention or preparedness.
Right. Again, it speaks to relying on what the laws say and what the police say. But it also says follow-up action is to ensure that the victim is safe and not at risk of reoccurrence. These are our policies.
Right. So, and then when you say ensure now, what does ensure mean?
Ensure would mean, like I said, these little things, making sure you control the movement of this one person, right? And we have better control over that person than, say, others.
What happened in your case, Doreen? We're talking about a different generation, right?
You mean when I
in terms of
told somebody?
The headmaster, where did it go from there?
Well, he didn't report it.
Right.
Well, I mean, there wouldn't be a CD then, but he didn't go to the police, or
no?
He didn't encourage you to go to the police?
No, he didn't. I don't know if it was because a length of time had gone by the time he actually found out, because I was actually 3 months pregnant by the time I told him, so I don't know if that had anything to do with it. But his main concern was dealing with me and helping me to cope with the situation. No, it didn't involve the law at all.
I mean, and it's important to point out here that there's no limitation, there's no statute of limitation on crimes. There's no statute of limitation on crime. So
there's none on rape?
No, there's no statute of limitations on any crime. Even rape. So
somebody was raped in 1971,
yes.
1965.
This crime
and come forward today to say to try rape.
Well,
it's still a crime.
Is the gentleman living?
I don't know.
Well, you've cried rape in your book. You could cry rape louder. Because it seems as if you still... I didn't know that.
Yes. Most persons don't. Most persons believe that, too much time passed, forget it. No. The law has civil matters which have a period that expired. Generally 6 years. It's anything man and woman business. But if there's a crime that affects society, murder, rape, theft, those are unlimited jurisdiction, unlimited duration. So you can bring that matter anytime.
And you can help us with this, Alison. The person who gets pregnant in school, we're going to come out of school shortly because young girls and older women, people are being raped in Jamaica. To me, it seems, I don't know if it's more reporting, but you get one almost every day. At least the allegations. All right. So I want to find out about the young lady who's in school, who gets pregnant in school. What then? And now we're joined in the studio by another very, very special guest. And we mentioned before that she would be joining us, and that's Dr. Beverly Scott. She's also a part-time lecturer in development, abnormal psychology, and other psychology courses at the International University of the Caribbean in Montego Bay. She's a founder and executive director of the Family and Parenting Center, and is a co-author, as we told you before, 3 handbooks: Positive Parenting, Handbook for Guidance Counselors, Treatment for Children with Emotional Development and Behavioral Problems. Dr. Beverly Scott, thank you very much for joining us in the studio.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you. We've been reading so much about you and the work that you have done that we thought we could not have had this discussion without inviting you in to help us to understand, first of all, what's happening in our own country with regards to rape and other sexual crimes. I don't know if you've been listening to the program on your way in, but just in case you haven't, we've gone a ways, but I wanted to just back up a little bit, because I know something that's very, very interesting to you, and something that you've spent some time on is what happens to the victim of rape, but also the perpetrator, and especially if they are children, if they're teenagers or children. What's your take on this? Because you do have an interesting theory about what should happen in situations.
Why this has happened to them. So victims are really devastated. They no longer, many of them can live a normal life, and this situation often lingers with them for a very long time.
How important is this knowledge in the setting in which we're focusing right now, which is a school setting? How important is it for guidance counselors and teachers and others to know that these are some of the emotions, the feelings that the victim might be going through, suffering?
This is very important, especially in light of our society, where people see victims sometimes as instigators and persons who cause these things to happen, maybe by the way they dress, maybe by the place they were, and different things that seem to put a blame on the victim, rather than looking at the situation as a fact that somebody has been violated, wherever he or she was. This person has been violated.
We have been
against his wish.
We've been talking this evening about, and my own personal views, which don't always count, but I really do feel strongly about this, that in a school setting where the victim and the alleged rapists go to the same school, that it seems to me that there is not enough consideration, even though there's a structure in place, there are policies in place to ensure that the victim is protected, the safety of the victim. But it seems to me as if how do you ensure this? How do you protect that victim totally from the alleged perpetrators, and what should happen? What are your views on what should happen? Should they really be going back to the same school, or do you think otherwise?
Well, victim and perpetrator in school. Very often we have girlfriends and boyfriends in school, and so we have to explore, what was the relationship between these two people, before the sexual abuse took place. And as you said, we should protect the victim from the perpetrator. We should let the victim feel that we are defending him or her, and the victim should feel safe in the company of the guidance counselor, and should feel free to speak out, because this is one of the situations where victims need to look at what has happened, examine it, go over it, speak about it, because this is where healing comes in. The more the person speaks about it, the more the person feels some amount of healing and overcoming of what has happened. You have instances where victims and perpetrators are girlfriends and boyfriends. They're exploring each other.
What about situations?
15-year-olds, 16-year-olds.
What about a situation when it's not that, though? When it is, because we have heard of cases now. It's been in the news, and this is why we can repeat some of this, because some of these have been in the news at different times, where you have boys trailing or stalking young girls on the way home from school or wherever, and then follow them, get off the bus or whatever public transport that they're on, follow them into areas where they know they can, do what they want to do, and then rape them. What about situations like that, where you don't even know the boys, you just know them from their school uniform, or the fact that you've seen them in school here or there?
But I think those victims should get the full force of the law.
You mean
those perpetrators rather should get the full?
But they're alleged. What's the full?
We do have remand centers for alleged perpetrators. The issue is, as we have explored, until they are convicted, what do we do? The situation seems to be that we don't have a plan B. There's nowhere for the perpetrators to go in the meantime, and that's a clear failing. So the policy, to my mind, seems to be failing the victims, because it doesn't have a option of a relocation of the victim or perpetrator.
Go through the judicial process, to go through the courts, years and years and years, that these boys are ushered into society, not being punished, not even being reprimanded, because they're still allowed to go to school because they're innocent until proven guilty, and then are unleashed on society. And we have to look at that feeding trough in any discussion that we're having about rape in Jamaica in 2012. This program was aired, that you're listening to, was aired 2 years ago. We're going to return to the rebroadcast. In terms of examining which one of the scenarios, for example, specifically the one that I referred to, I mean, that would be a scenario where you'd need to separate victim and
right.
What do you think, Alison, a scenario like that as opposed to the one that we just heard from Dr. Scott, in terms of if there could be boyfriend, girlfriend, that would be a whole different case?
Well, Andrea, rape is rape for me. Rape is rape for me. And once.
But I'm not talking about rape. I'm talking about whether or not the perpetrator and the alleged victim and the victim and the alleged perpetrator stay in the school.
Right.
In the same.
It's not a school problem. It's not a school problem because you have workplace issues, issues in communities, neighbors.
Listen, I understand that, and that's why I'm saying that in this segment of the program where we're looking at the school community, where this is happening in our schools.
And the school relies on the Jamaican laws.
And the law is failing.
Well,
right.
Maurice,
okay.
I am saying that the
somebody's
school is
and somebody's lines on. There is a hole in the bucket.
That's the only thing that they have to rely on. If they're innocent until proven guilty, the process has to follow for investigation. What if it wasn't true? What if it was and the allegation was proven false?
And that is the exact point I'm making, because how do you protect the person who's making the allegations from intimidation, from reprisals, we're talking about our own society, you know?
Well, once an allegation has been made and an investigation is ongoing, I am sure, Maurice has to back me up on this, that the perpetrators are cautioned not to have contact with the...
yes, definitely.
Right?
I mean, that...
And if there is contact,
that is like
another report is made.
That is like saying to the jury, you did not hear what the gentleman just said, ignore it.
And if contact is made, another report should be made. It should file for harassment, it's, stalking, harassment, whatever it is. So they have to make, and then we take it from there, because then they have behavioral challenges in which we probably can act.
But the law really is not meant to be a shackle. I don't mean to be,
No, I know you're not trying to be feisty. The law is meant to be a base, right, on which society can build a society, build, existence. That's the purpose of the law. The law shouldn't be something that comes and hammers people over the head. But sadly, in this case, not even that base is there, in my view. The law, there's a gaping hole in the law, in that the law should provide an option for the victim to enjoy effective protection. Because there's a principle in law, justice delayed is justice denied.
Yes, make a lot of sense.
Yeah, let me jump in there.
Yes.
There's the victim support unit, in the Ministry of National Security and Justice, where people can go to be protected. I've known of victims who have been taken from their own communities and taken to other places, because many times victims become further victims because they are witnesses in court.
They're re-victimized.
They're re-victimized, and sometimes they're killed. And so the Victim Support Unit has the responsibility to protect victims in Jamaica.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I want to look at what happens in the court system now, because we were talking about earlier, Maurice was talking about how long the process can be sometimes. Well, most times it would appear. But you're talking about being victimized all over again for the victim in terms of what happens in the court system. Can you tell us what happens now? And I know you have written about how this probably needs to be modified, to be changed, improved upon.
Yes. At this moment, the child protection stakeholders, inclusive of Office of the Children's Advocate, the Children's Registry, CISOCA, Police High Command, they have formed, and in collaboration with Family and Parenting Center, because we are the NGO through which funds have been routed to deal with a project to look at secondary victimization of especially children, and to reduce or mitigate the causes of secondary victimization of children who report allegations of sexual abuse, and to develop a multi-agency approach to protecting children who have been sexually abused in terms of reporting and in terms of the initial evidence, because quite a number of initial evidences have been contaminated. And many times the child tells her story or his story several times before it gets to the courts. And,
so they relive.
This is contaminated.
The whole thing.
So what happened is that the organizations, the child protection agencies, have come together to work out a multi-agency approach to children reporting allegations of sexual abuse, so that the report goes straight into, for example, CISOCA in Kingston, where the pilot project is being implemented. So the multi-agency approach that you're talking about, this involves all the agencies. All the agencies that involved with child protection. Children's registry and all of that. They have a strategic plan, as it were, now that they're really running. It's off the ground, where they're looking at improving the evidence initially, so that it's not contaminated, so that parent doesn't come with a story. It doesn't go to guidance counsel who gets a different story. It goes straight into where the evidence is supposed to be given, and the person who is to interview the victim is trained to UK standard. And as we speak, not taking tales out of school, CISOCA is fitted with the equipment to accept video evidence from children.
All right, I know this is said don't take tales out of school. It's not like you're giving me a news clip here. So, because we don't have this information yet. Okay. This is not out in the public, is it?
So it's not out in the public. We're
hearing this for the first time now.
We're hoping to sensitize the public.
Okay,
but because the legislations have not yet changed to bring video evidence in, we have to be very careful. Okay. So we're looking at making a recommendation to government, and probably I can make it right here.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Dr. Scott.
To introduce video evidence so that children are not re-traumatized when they go to court and see the High Court judge with this big and this lawyer looking like the person who raped them.
Why you pointing at me, Andrea?
I didn't know that's what she was going to say. Because you're a human rights lawyer, but I know you can be intimidating when you're ready. Although you really do have a disarming smile, so all you have to do is smile at them.
And the evidence will not be contaminated, because it wouldn't have gone through all of the different persons. And within hours, the Office of the Children's Registry would have gotten a report.
I want to back up a bit. I want to back up a bit, because I want to get the correct information. You talked about the video. That CISOCA is now capable of taking video evidence.
They are equipped with video.
But they can't use it.
They can't use it. And we have trained 24 officers to UK standard to take evidence from children who have been especially victims of sexual abuse.
But this is pretty new. This is fairly new to us, because we've had discussions on this all the time. I wouldn't even know that, CISOCA. Right. But you're saying now they can. Now they have the capability to do this.
They have the capability, so we're waiting on the legislation to change.
How it looks to you?
Looks good.
Okay.
And we have shared our report and our investigation, especially when we did we did an audit of the child protection system in Jamaica, which found a lot of shortfalls and all the things that happen to children by way of victimization. And the result of the audit was shared with the Prime Minister and other child protection stakeholders, inclusive of the Attorney General, and they are very, aware of what's happening and very sensitive to what is happening to children and very accommodating of changing the law.
Is the new model that yours, the head of one of the NGOs, and then the other government agencies that you are proposing, if this comes into being, what would it look like?
It would look like a situation where children do not go to court for several times before their trial. They may not even go at all.
Oh, that's good news.
The evidence will be so overpowering that the victim will say, the perpetrator might say, I'm guilty. Let me have a little bargain here so that I can have a lower sentence. Mm-hmm. We have watched video evidence of a 5-year-old in Britain who was abused by her father. And the father denied flatly everything. And when the little girl spoke of what happened, while she didn't understand what was happening to her, the father had to say, yes, I'm guilty. Because the evidence is not contaminated, because the evidence goes straight into,
that video bank.
That video bank. And the interview is done by a trained person, almost to the level of a psychologist.
Okay, so
although he's an officer.
So for those of us who watch a lot of TV now, that sounds like Law and Order, special SVU. Right. Now, okay, how does it sound to you though?
I have to take my my human rights hat and put it on squarely right now, because I am thinking, as a defense attorney, would I be comfortable not being able to see this this child? Would I be comfortable with the concept or the thought that my client's life hangs in the balance based on the word of a 5-year-old who could be very well fabricating, who could have very well watched SVU?
But it's not just video evidence alone. I think is it?
That's what primarily. But you would be privileged to also view the recording.
No, it's not just you see what I want to be assured of, and I think any defense attorney worth their salt is going to want to be assured of this. The person who asks the question must not only be trained to the level of a psychologist, but they must also be trained to the level of a lawyer to know what the criminal standard is, because children, sadly, in our jurisdiction, are overexposed, and so they may have seen something. They might be trying to get attention. There are many ways this can be twisted. And remember, the standard is beyond a reasonable doubt when it comes to crime. It's not a balance of probabilities. It's beyond a reasonable doubt. And anytime you have a child who can say, well, I want to get back at so-and-so because they didn't treat me right or whatever. They make up a story, and then somebody's incarcerated, and then 5 years later they change their mind.
What about the other evidence? But it seems to me that it couldn't be.
I'm just being devil's advocate here, So don't say I take one side or the other.
You're co-hosting. But I'm thinking it's not just video evidence. The video evidence is just one
because the child can also be cross-examined, and the Bar Association is on this as well. They have looked at video evidences, and they have asked for a workshop to just bring them up to date on what is happening.
I'm sure.
And according to the findings coming from the Hickling Paisley report of 1 million suffering from personality disorder in Jamaica, we need more lawyers studying psychology.
No, but definitely, I agree with you. Right now I'm reading up on psychology myself.
Very important.
If you don't know psychology, you can't be a good lawyer. It's my view.
And research has shown that children are truthful unless their evidence is contaminated. For example, the child tells mother something, and mother is telling somebody else in the presence of the child, and the child believes that what mother is now saying, that's what he or she is to say. So we try not to have the child speaking to too many people before the child speaks to the right person.
And that is what I'm saying. Children,
this is how the multi-agency system works.
Children are impressionable. I think you will acknowledge that, Doctor. And that doubt about the impressionability of children is what could be used to destroy a case. So we'd have to make sure that it is airtight. There's no way you can introduce any previous viewing of any similar incident on TV, and children watch too much violent information or violent TV. So there could be.
So what about the rape?
There will be other evidences, you know.
I'm sure.
What about if there's molestation? So do you do, like, for example, for persons, we're talking about young children now, but what about like teenagers and so on, and even adults who present now who have been raped? What would be the advice to persons like that? Because obviously you're going to take now the rape kit. I mean, what advice for persons who are listening? If you find yourself in a situation like that, what should you do? What shouldn't you do?
The person should not just wash quickly, because when you're raped, you feel real dirty and you want to wash. Mm-hmm. That person should go to a doctor first of all and report it to the police as soon as possible.
Housing Agency of Jamaica, building Jamaica one community at a time. Call us at 968-752-2224. The time by HAJ is
3 minutes now after 8 o'clock, listening again with fresh ears to a discussion we carried 2 years ago on Sexwise on Irie FM entitled Rape, and looking at the various issues. It's a complex issue, as you heard at the beginning of the discussion from my co-host, then Attorney at Law Maurice Tomlinson. And so we're looking at some of the finer details, including what happens in the school situation, and then now looking at the law and the protection of children, talking about the victims, the survivors, the perpetrators, and so on, in terms of the provisions of the law. We heard about a legislation that needed reform. I don't know what has happened so far, but whenever there is a punctuation mark in terms of a real vicious act of rape in Jamaica, the entire country, belches for a few days, and then everything settles down and our bellies stop hurting us because we've eased that gas. But in between the viciousness, there are acts of violent rape against our babies, our daughters, our sisters, our mothers, and even our grandmothers in Jamaica. And let me say, also our sons, as we have been seeing. And because there is not that level of viciousness, there is not that manifestation of something that is so potent and so horrific and so heinous that we don't even want to name it, that we are quiet, and it's a quiet moment, and we wear white, and then we don our blacks when we hear something like this. This is an ongoing and dynamic situation in Jamaica. Rape is in our communities, in our homes, in our communities, in our churches, in our schools, in our society, in our nation, and it is an ongoing and continuing situation that only it erupts volcano-like in cases like the one we hear out of St. James, so that the way we deal with this through the courts, in Parliament, in our communities and churches and so on, all of this is going to take more than just a mindset change. Believe me, it is going to have to take a connectedness, collaboration, collectivity. It is going to have to take an effort by all of us to change that status quo, to first of all not tolerate it in our homes, to not tolerate it because the Bible says so and so, to see rape for what it is. This is the seriousness of a situation, and marches will not change the problem. Minutes of silence only make the silence worse. Quick break. A rebroadcast of a program aired 2 years ago here on Irie FM on Sexwise. We were looking at the topic rape. We did that against a background of an escalating situation in Jamaica, in which we're seeing more and more vicious kinds of rape. Rape, in terms of the frequency in Jamaica, is not a new thing. It's not unique. But in terms of what we're hearing about the viciousness involved, we really do have cause for concern. And once again, our heart goes out to all the survivors, the families, and those who have been viciously raped, those who have been molested. As a society, we have a question to ask ourselves, because, as I said earlier, we do not wonder at that which we frequently see. And that's one of the reasons why we do not wonder about sexual molestation of children. It's one of the reasons why we do not wonder about incest. It's one of the reasons why we do not wonder about child abuse in terms of the beatings that children in Jamaica get. We do not wonder at that which we frequently see, even though we are ignorant of the cause of it. We're wondering, though. We're wondering about the viciousness with which our sons are raping our daughters. And the reason for that is because we have not seen this frequently, even though it is part of our historical context in terms of the enslavers raping our mothers, our daughters, our grandmothers in the period of enslavement in Jamaica. So we're wondering about this because we are not seeing it frequently. But we're seeing it frequently enough, as we did with child molestation and incest and rape, to know that very soon we will no longer wonder about this viciousness. If a tree falls in a forest and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? The bottom line is that our collective ability as a nation to hear, accept, and cope with the knowledge of the brutal, horrific, and heinous rape of our 5 daughters, our babies and their mothers and sisters in St. James, is stretched to its fullest limit, and we ourselves will seek ways to block this dastardly act from our collective memories, to purge it from our consciousness, and to snap back to a gentler reality, if only that were possible. The bottom line is that as a nation, we all want to hold our sisters and especially our babies in our arms and assure them that they will be okay, that they are survivors, and that we will be there for them to help see them through these terrible and difficult times. The bottom line is that we have said this before. To the family of our young sister viciously raped and murdered in Woodside, St. Mary. To the little girls on maternity wards in hospitals all across Jamaica, waiting to deliver the babies of those who rape and molest them. To the Armadale children. To the young girls and boys in prisons, better known as places of safety in Jamaica. We have said this before. We have said this before to the babies whose stomachs are being pumped of semen on our children's wards in various parts of the island. To the girls who are raped in the corridors of their schools and who are afraid to walk alone on their campuses. And those who run naked through the streets of St. Mary, fleeing their attackers, only to be gang raped. And to be returned to school to find those same rapists in their classes innocent until proven guilty in a system which will not find them guilty or adequately punish them if it does. The bottom line is that we have said this before, given reassurance to our babies that we would be there for them. We speak loudly and march, always in black, always marching in black, reserving white for the kinder times, as if that makes us any more likely to take action after our self-imposed minutes of silence. The bottom line is that now is a time for more than marches. Now is not the time for silence. We have done that. We have marched for peace and for justice and for recognition and for a voice and for unity. We have done that. Now we ask, how many more of our babies will have to be sodomized and brutally raped before we realize that marches and silence do not work? If a tree falls in a forest and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? The bottom line is that we, the decent citizens of Jamaica, we must identify ourselves. We who have been crying rape and incest and child molestation and child abuse for years cannot afford to allow ourselves to be victims of groupthink, We cannot allow politicians who have failed to put measures in place to protect our children to adequately respond to issues of rape and child molestation in our society because it was not politically expedient to do so. We cannot afford to allow them to distract us from their incompetence, their negligence, and their role in fostering crime and violence in our society through their partisan politics and their dependence on criminals to help them get the vote. If a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? The bottom line is that we cannot afford to be victims of groupthink on this one. We cannot afford to march because they decreed it. We cannot afford to don black because they say so. We cannot afford to stand beside them calling for justice and an end to criminal activities when we know that their politics are responsible for where we are in the first place. The bottom line is that on this one thing, rape, child molestation, incest, child abuse, for they are one in my mind, we cannot allow ourselves to fall prey to groupthink, to be confused by the game of political mirrors and pretense. We need action, broader, deeper, holistic action, and we hold them accountable. The bottom line is that brutal and vicious rapes are not alien to the Jamaican reality, a reality which continues to be actively created by a system which has been left to fester despite years of warnings, cues in the environment that should have been recognized but which continue to be ignored even while we march in stereotypical black and observe minutes of hypocritical silence. The bottom line is that Jamaica's reality of crime and violence, the vicious rapes of our daughters and sons, our sisters and our brothers, our mothers and fathers and our grandmothers is being actively created by a system which has failed to recognize the subtle and not too subtle cues in our society over the last 2 to 3 decades. And we hold them equally responsible for failing over the many, many, many years to stand up against criminality, including rape, to denounce downmanship and garrison communities. If they are serious about ending criminal activities, including rapes in our communities, let them denounce the creation of garrisons and criminals posing as community leaders in their constituencies before they ask us to march and remain silent, wearing black. The bottom line is that, as they say in Haiti, he who betrayed you yesterday will not save you today. If a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? The bottom line is that if we are to begin to address criminality in Jamaica, of which rape is paramount, if we must march, if we must wear black and take to the streets, let us do so against tribal politics, against a system which continues to protect gunmen, against a system which needs guns to get the vote, against a system which fosters a dumbing down of our young men and devalues excellence in favor of downmanship, drunkenness, gangsterism, and dancehall. Let us do so against a system which would pay millions to so-called advisors while our children are crammed in prison-like slave ships called schools. The bottom line is that if we are to protect our babies from rapists and other criminal elements in our society, we must stand up against the system which provides no justice, which embraces inequity, which values a tourist over its citizens, against a system which would ignore the glaring warnings of a steadily increasing number of sexual crimes since 1990, and we could go back. The bottom line is that we know that it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a community to raise a child. So as a society, we also have some serious questions to ask of ourselves. If a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? Those who would viciously rape and maim our babies, where did they come from? How did they fall through the safety net that should have caught them, even if they were from single-parent homes? Where does the vicious cycle of abuse end? The bottom line is that the action of those who would so brutally rape our daughters is a manifestation of a society that has lost cultural cohesion, that would have set boundaries, that cohesion, and given directions. A society that has lost its identity in a concept of multiculturalism, which devalues the African identity in which the victim and the perpetrators belong to the same group, talking about out of many one. The bottom line is that the collective rape of our daughters by our sons represents a co-evolution of something pernicious, the co-creation of something sinister, and the emergence of a reality bound to result in self-annihilation. The bottom line is that this latest barbaric act of rape and violence against our sisters and our babies must be the indelible line in the sand, the point at which we hold not only government responsible, but ourselves as a community, as a nation. Taking collective responsibility for the sustained implementation of measures to re-socialize, reculturalize, and restore dignity, pride, and hope to our people in an environment of justice, equity, and African-centeredness. That is the bottom line.
Where you rape them and then go kill them. They say you know I've no heart for the children. How you move so cool? What make you throw the little picnic in the hole? Oh no. Oh, you say you are a big man on the scene, and you are a little picnic when you're 13. Then you claim say you bad, but I'm just left you to the wrath of God. You go pull you, hey murderer, hey Jaja gonna school you, molester, hey Jaja gonna pull you, hey murderer, little children, watch where you're going, watch where you walk, them coming at you like a hungry shark. No play too late in at the park. No, don't just the shadow of the dark. Oh no, nobody going and no one don't care. Make sure say you know. Oh no, nobody going and no one don't care. Make sure say you know who they are. Nobody see you too late. Cause vampires will be standing at your gate. Them a
This is how we're saying goodbye from the program for this morning. Just before we go, On Facebook, Uprising Root says, children get first priority. We have to ensure them surety. We must create the opportunity to let the youths bring forth them ability. Elton Dexter says, I won't wear black, but I'll stand on the town square to demand that the DNA law be passed before the end of October. Come on, legislators, put your energies there and stop playing blame games and color games. Or do we need to paint green and orange at crime scenes to get your undivided attention? Too much talk, announcements, and committees. Time for action. And then just 2 minutes ago, before the big A comes in and before we take it over to Droop Lion, my parents, my mom and my dad are celebrating 50 years of marriage today. And just want to say happy anniversary to them. Mrs. Doris Williams, Mr. Doyle Williams in Hopewell, Marlborough in St. Mary. 50 years of togetherness, 50 years of marriage. And really still a very, very beautiful relationship of which I'm very, very proud to be a part. So just want to say happy anniversary to you from all of your children, all of your grandchildren. Have a blessed and a lovely day.